found them.
Why would you say?
I was translating a video in it, and you mentioned them.
Oh.
No, the ones.
That's a lot.
Have you got any more questions? Why is that long? Huh?
Okay, shall we start, yeah? Assalamu alaikum. Alhamdulillah Rabbil Alameen. Wa salatu wassalamu ala Sayyidil Mursaleen. Nabiyyina Muhammad wa ala alihi wa sahbihi ajma'in. We've concluded with looking at some of the rights that Islam puts on the elders from our household, those who are younger in our household, and those people that we generally have to live with, closer relatives and extended relatives. Now we're going to look at two different chapters which talk about those people who have the most rights over us after our families. Now, before we get to that, we looked at this ayah before, and a whole series of ayats in Surah Al-Isra, where Allah is giving us commandments. And the ulama have actually called these set of ayat in Surah Al-Isra as the ayat of commandments. And there are several commandments in this. So the first one is, obviously, as you would find in any kind of scripture within Islam, is to worship Allah alone. After that, be dutiful to your parents. And then Islam, in this ayah, talks about their importance and how we should respect them and make dua for them and show kindness to them, etc. And then be good to those people who need you. Be of assistance to other people. Don't be wasteful. Seek the mercy of Allah by being good towards others and spend in an honourable manner. Giving sadaqah. Don't kill one another. And like we said, it is part of the Jahiliyyah that they used to kill their children at a very early age if they didn't like having a boy or a girl, for example, so they used to bury them alive. Don't do zina. Don't kill other people unjustly. Adults now we're talking about. Don't be oppressful or don't be oppressive towards the orphans and those people who are weaker than you. Fulfill your oaths. So again, we're talking about all these commandments here. We're talking about not talking without knowledge. We're talking about being just in your trade. And all of this is going to be asked and then concluded with Allah on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And all of this, these are the commandments that Allah is saying which He hates. Now, the reason why I've put this here is because there seems to be a sequence that if you have Tawheed, then you will give that level of respect to Allah. Once you give that level of respect to Allah, and you show respect, you show etiquettes, you show ikhlas towards your Creator, then you will think to yourself, well, if that's the relationship that I have with the Creator, then what do I do next with the creation? And these ayats talk about that. Now, if you uphold each step, not necessarily that you have to be good to your parents so that you won't end up doing zina. It's not like that. But the point here is that once you start showing respect to Allah and having ikhlas in Him, then you would only be able to show and spread betterment within the creation. And we can see that clearly within the sequence of ayat here. So a person might, for example, want to do something good to the poor and the needy, etc. But if he's not got ikhlas for the sake of Allah, that act of charity and that act of goodness will be deficient. And it might not even have as much as barakah as it would have had he had ikhlas in it. The man of high status, and this is what Imam Muslim has put in the introduction of his Sahih. The question is, going back to the question, after our parents and after those people who we are related to and have a relationship of being dutiful and upholding ties with, who are those that we need to respect the most within society? Imam Muslim has answered that question for us. The man of high status should be given the respect to which he is entitled. Okay, and this might not necessarily be a scholar, but it could also be your parent, it could also be other people who have status. And the one who has low level of knowledge should not be elevated above his status. So now, those people who are the scholars should be given precedence over anybody else, and the lesser the lesser. And the same applies now. I'm trying to draw a comparison here between being obedient to parents and obedient to the ulama and those people who are being given virtue by Allah. Whoever undervalues the scholars, Imam Muslim is saying, in the beginning of his Sahih, the second most authentic book of hadith in Islam, whoever undervalues, this is what he's saying in the introduction, whoever undervalues the scholars will lose his afterlife. And we can see that within the context here also. If you are not dutiful to your parents, then everything becomes relaxed. You can do zina, you can do whatever you want, you can treat others however you want, because if you're not going to have respect to the people that have actually brought you into the dunya, then who are you going to have respect for? There's nobody in society left worthy of having respect for. And the same thing applies to the ulama. If you respect the ulama, and you know who the ulama are, after your parents, this is their level of right that they have over you. But now, a question which asks itself is, what is ilm? We talk about scholars, we talk about ulama, etc. But before we can know who an alim is and what his characteristics are and what a scholar is, etc., we need to know what knowledge is. So the one who possesses that knowledge will be able to then be categorized as to be from the people of knowledge. The ulama have given different definitions. They don't necessarily need to contradict one another. They can explain one another and complement one another in different circumstances. Some of the ulama, now, I've got a great passion for usul al-fiqh because we studied this at length in great detail with Sheikh Saleh Shithri, and all of these notes that you see here are taken from his lessons. Now, we have to remember, Riyadh as-Saaleheen is a book of manners and virtue and really just bringing about heart softening etiquette to the life of the Muslim, and making us try to contemplate and ponder and make us better people. It's not a book of principles. Riyadh as-Saaleheen. Riyadh as-Saaleheen is not a book of fiqh, it's not a book of tafsir per se and all these things. So this is completely out of context to the lessons that we are studying with Riyadh as-Saaleheen, but I think it's very, very important because we're talking about knowledge, and we're living now in a society where people are very easy to say, well, that person's got knowledge and this is knowledge, etc. But, deviants are using it and claiming it. People within Ahl Sunnah are saying, well, such and such person is a knowledgeable person. But, I mean, what we need to do is actually start to categorize for ourselves and understand the principles behind that. And one thing I benefited myself from last week's lecture is the question and answer afterwards was, to me, showing that people have a genuine concern and have genuine questions about how to approach knowledge and what to do when there are different opinions, when there are different madhabs, etc. And which is very good, it's very healthy, because when the Muslims actually came to this country, they only knew one way, and as most of our parents, they just told us one, textbooks kind of way of Islam. But now we've got people from everywhere. We've got Arabs, we've got Africans, we've got Asians, we've got so many different, backgrounds. And now fiqh is being introduced to one another, and people are seeing other people practice Islam in a different way. So that's raising questions, and it's very healthy to have this conversation. If we are just going to say, well, they've got their own way, or they're wrong and we're right, and yeah, that's acceptable, but our way is better, or even, sometimes, unfortunately, even racism. Arabs don't know anything, Africans don't know anything, Pakistanis don't know anything, and then they just become dismissed for their religious opinion. That's not correct, and we can't have that. So now, to understand all of that correctly, and for us to have the correct approach, what I've done is I've incorporated in today's lesson some of these principles and some of the things that we've studied when it comes to taqleed and ijtihad. And any good book in usul al-fiqh is categorized in different ways. So it starts off with talking about what sources that we take knowledge from, etc. So typically Quran, Hadith, Ijma, etc. And towards the end of any good usul al-fiqh book, they will talk you about principles when it comes to who the scholar is and who the person who is not the scholar, who is trying to understand his religion. So therefore you have taqleed, the person who's trying to understand, and ijtihad, the scholar who is able to derive. So within that context, what is ilm? Some of the ulama have said is anything which is proven with a reality. Now what they mean by reality is something which can be proven either with text, either with senses, either with logic, common sense. So within this, typical definition would be, is the fire hot? Everybody knows that. Even animals know that. That is a kind of ilm that everybody shares. So because it's in touch with your senses, etc. Another definition given to ilm is something which is proven by the texts and which has dalil. So if you're doing something and doesn't have textual proof for it, does that person have ilm? Doesn't have ilm. If he's practicing the Milad al-Nabi, for example, I mean, I'll just keep picking on that one, but that's just one example. Ask him for his dalil. Do you have dalil for that? Is there legitimate ijtihad to prove that from the early generations? If all of that fails, there is no dalil. And dalil is quite vast. It doesn't necessarily have to be Quran. It doesn't necessarily have to be hadith. It could be a combination of Quran and hadith. It could be an understanding from Quran and hadith, which is also very important because us as Salafis have become very dismissive. Is it in the hadith or not? Have you got hadith or not? It doesn't necessarily mean that it has to be in the hadith. And this has actually happened recently where a sister passed away and they were washing the body, and some of the people washing the body were saying that, no, we just want everything that has dalil for it. You know, either a hadith or an ayah. Obviously, you're not going to find many ahkam when it comes to washing in the Quran itself. So where's the hadith? Where's the hadith that the Prophet ﷺ did this, or he commanded some of the women to do this, etc. But some of the things that the woman was suggesting were actually found in the books of the madhahib. So the people that were there were thinking, well, that's not proof, and we're not going to accept that. But that's wrong, because the way we derive dalil is much more vast and complex than that. It's not necessarily, is that ayah? Yes. Is that hadith? Yes. Yes or no. Therefore, there is no dalil. And that's a bit more intricate, obviously, when it comes to usul al-fiqh. Another definition given to ilm and knowledge is where a person has firm conviction in it. Someone where he has firm conviction in it. So does Allah exist? Do angels exist? We have firm conviction. So a person might not necessarily know the dalil. You know, there are many people, including us, if you ask them, do angels exist? Yeah, I believe in that, but can you give me dalil for it? Can you give me something which you can sensually touch and find? No. Do you have textual proof from the Quran? Well, I don't actually know Arabic, I'm not memorized much, but I do know for firm conviction that they exist. Therefore, this is a kind of ilm that a person possesses. Stemming from these definitions of ilm, the ulama have said that there are two types of ilm. Ilm which is absolutely essential for all of us needing to have, and some of ilm which is attained and which is muktasab. Now with this, we can realize that not all kinds of ilm is on the same level. The daruri one could be arguably this one. So is the fire hot? Is the water cold? Everybody knows that. For us to understand, is Islam real? Does Allah exist? Is Allah one? All of those things, for some people, it would be this one. They would have to go out there and investigate and think about it and then come to their own conclusion. This would be then attained kind of knowledge, which is muktasab. So now, based on this, the definition and the types of knowledge, now we are able now to understand who is the scholar. Because the scholar is somebody who is in touch with reality, who has the dalil, and he's able to tie that all in with firm conviction. If a person has dalil but is not sure, is that ilm? It's not ilm. Do angels exist? Does the hellfire exist? Yeah, I've read it in the Quran, here's the dalil, etc. Does it exist? I'm not entirely sure. It might not exist right now. That's not ilm then. So who is a scholar? The ulama have said that there are at least 5 conditions for a scholar. Number 1, he has to have knowledge of the Quran and the Sunnah. He has to have a good textual foundation to his religion. And that doesn't necessarily mean that he is a hafiz, but as long as he knows the proof and where the proofs exist and where he can find the proofs from the Quran and the Sunnah, that is sufficient. Another condition for a person to be deemed as a scholar is that he knows the differences of opinions and the areas where there are no differences of opinions. Yeah? So, yes, okay, this is the opinion of the Hanafis and the Malikis and the Shafis and Hanbalis. Everyone has their own opinion here. And I think this one is the correct one because of point number 1. And for example, music, is it halal? Some people say yes, it is. But the scholars from the very earliest generations had complete consensus that music with musical instruments is haram. So if a person comes out and says right now, actually there's a difference of opinion, he's not a true scholar because he has not understood the areas of khilaf and the areas of ijma'. Another characteristic of an alim is that he's well versed in the Arabic language, but not that he can go out and shop in Tesco or shop, in the supermarket in Arabic language. The ulama have said that the Arabic language needed to understand 1 and 2. Needed to understand 1 and 2. So a person might not necessarily be fluent in speaking Arabic, but he's able to understand 1 and 2, and with that level of Arabic, that is sufficient for him to become an alim. A 4th condition here is that he has knowledge of usul al-fiqh, and this is very important because usul al-fiqh is used to derive. And this is the example I was giving of the ghusl of that woman. People were stuck here, in that room. They were quite well versed, some of them, the person that was in the room saying, some of them, they knew the sunnah very well and their arguments were quite compelling because they knew the sunnah. but they weren't here, and they weren't here, and they definitely weren't there. So now, had they been there, they would be able to say, okay, well, some things are tolerable. If they want to do it that way, the family want to do certain things, let them do that, because that can be derived from the understanding from the Quran and the Sunnah, or from the Arabic language, etc. So usul al-fiqh is very important to understand and derive, but also to understand what is general and what is specific, what is abrogated and what is still, binding upon this ummah. And the fifth condition is that, and there are other conditions, some of the ulama have said there are up to 9 conditions and there are more, but just for the sake of brevity, the ulama have said that a person must be free of major sin. Nobody is free of sin. But if a person is a zani, can he be an alim? If a person is taking riba, knowingly doing something haram, not because of his ijtihad, knowingly doing something haram, can he be an alim? No. If a person is doing shirk, can he be an alim? Of course not. So the ulama have said that the person must be free from major sin. And one of the books that we studied with the Shaykh is this one, Al-Faqih wal-Mutafaqqih, and in that it says, if a scholar himself, he has all of these things. Look at the justice of Islam. He has all of these things. He's able to understand the religion very, very well. He's got Arabic language, all those things, but he's got a few weaknesses. In that scenario, he is not a scholar per se because of his major sins, because all of the conditions are not satisfied, but he is a mufti for himself. So he's not a reference point for other people, but he himself is a scholar for himself. Yeah? Nabil?
You were talking about Arabic.
Yeah.
You said that, you repeated it.
So Arabic language, he needs to have a level of proficiency in the Arabic language which will enable him to understand the Sharia. Understand the Quran, the Sunnah, but also the statements of the ulama from the Salaf and the Madhahib. And to know the technical terms that they've used and all those different kind of things.
You mentioned something about speaking Arabic.
So he doesn't necessarily need to be able to have a conversation in Arabic, or to go and buy and sell in Arabic, or to go to the mechanics and be that kind of level of proficiency in Arabic. Just enough Arabic needed to understand the religion. Yeah? Okay. Next question. Does everyone who have knowledge necessarily mean that he is in a position to teach and call and become an alim? The answer is quite obvious. No. Not everybody who has knowledge is in a position to teach and call, and he is not necessarily an alim. And this is very important because we have jama'ats, we have groups now saying, everybody needs to go out and give da'wah. Come with me for 3 days, stay in the masjid, and we'll go out and give da'wah. But I don't know anything. I'm trying to sort myself out, and that's why I'm coming with you. No, you still need to come with us and knock on doors and call people to Islam. What am I going to call to? I'm not able to speak. I don't know anything. Therefore, that is a grave mistake. And this is just an example, but obviously there are other forms of this presenting itself where people are putting people ahead to speak when they are not in that position to do so. No person can position himself in fatwa especially, or giving durus and etc. and be considered as those people of taking ilm, unless he has 5 characteristics. Number 1, and this is very important. The reason why this is important is because this is actually how you can recognize a scholar. So now these are the conditions of a scholar. Do you know a person has this or not? You're not going to go up to him and say, well, how is your Arabic language and how much do you know of the Quran? You're not going to do that. So how can you yourself externally recognize this person is actually a person that I should be taking knowledge from? Number 1, first and foremost, ikhlas. If a person is calling you to the dunya, if a person is calling you to a madhab, if a person is calling you to a city or an institute or those kind of things, then not necessarily mean that he doesn't have ikhlas, but that might need to be reviewed in certain instances. One of the biggest things we know is if a person is calling to Allah and is calling to having a reward in the Day of Judgment, then that person is a mukhlis. And we've talked about how you can recognize ikhlas and the conditions of ikhlas. Conditions of ikhlas are 2, that you do it for the sake of Allah and you do it for the sake of gaining His Jannah. Also, that he is somebody who is patient. He is patient in the sake of the dunya, and he is patient in the sake of his da'wah. And he is patient in calling people, that he doesn't give it up. He doesn't, he remains persistent. He is firm in his knowledge and is able to decipher between what is right and what is wrong. So not only does he consider, is he considered in 1, 2 and 3, etc. here, but he also has a level of fiqh and wisdom where he's able to say, well, this has a betterment right now, and maybe we shouldn't talk about this right now, or maybe, talking about it in a good manner. He is independent himself financially, but also physically. Physically, so that he is not tied down to a particular group or, a setting, But independent financially also, some of the ulama, Imam Ahmad and others from the Salaf have said that don't seek knowledge for somebody who has to be paid by people, because then he can easily issue out fatwa and say things that people want to, because he's the one that's getting paid for. So independent in that manner. And another thing that he needs to know the setting, the environment that he's in, the culture of the people, the attitudes of the people, the expectancy of the people. And also on this website here, the Sheikh was also asked, let me just very quickly try and find it, because I know it's here somewhere. Sorry about this, because the Sheikh said it in a different way, which was, it's a bit similar, but he's given different characteristics also. I can't find it right now, but if you Google it and you type in simple ways to know a scholar, you will find it. So here it is. Sheikh Saad, in one of the introductions of his lessons in 1433, so what was that, 7 years ago, the Sheikh said, the true scholar is someone who reminds and calls the people to the akhirah and not for worldly gain. That's how you can recognize somebody who is sincere. He sticks to the text, and you will not find him talking unless he brings proof. Yeah, so it doesn't necessarily mean that a person is entertaining or somebody who's giving off stories, etc. The whole point and the whole reason why he should be talking is to connect people to Allah and the Akhirah, and he would be doing that by using those texts that Allah Jalla wa Ala has sent down to us as a guide. A true scholar is somebody who looks for finding betterment. He's sensitive to people's needs, and he tries to use the Sharia to make life easy for people, not necessarily difficult, not to turn people away, and try and bring goodness in people's life. And the fourth characteristic of a way to know a scholar, a true scholar, is the one who connects all his needs and affairs to Allah alone, because He is his master. And this is quite similar to what we were just saying here about a person being independent and knowing the realities of the people. So this is just a brief introduction. We haven't even started what the Shaykh has said. But this kind of benefiting from the usul will continue throughout the chapters. Nabi, you got a question?
Yeah, it's not a question for myself in particular, but it's just something that I hear quite often YouTubers and stuff today. They say that, a lot of institutes say that because the scholars, particularly in the East, they don't know the attitudes of the people, or perhaps they're not impactful. It's not for myself, by the way.
Yeah.
That because they're not living in the West, they don't understand the attitude or the problems of the Ummah here.
Yeah.
Therefore, their fatwa is not as legitimate as someone who has ilm to a lower degree, but understands the situation.
Okay, well, I have issues with both, two things here. Number one, YouTube, Google, and those kind of things. Based on this now, would you take knowledge from people on YouTube? Just anybody on YouTube? I mean, YouTube is a platform for people recording and uploading things, right? Not a search engine. You see the point here? If you're using it as a search engine, then there is a problem. Because you're just going to end up clicking on anything. You know, there's a lot of misleading information there. You know, there's something which I think is called bait. What's it called? Click, something like that. Someone was talking about it. So that's obviously going to mislead people. So you're going to click on it, and then you find something else, and then people are, you know what I'm saying. So if you're using it as a search engine, then there's a problem. And I wouldn't, based on this especially, wouldn't encourage that. The second thing here is that the person is saying that the scholar in the East doesn't necessarily know what's going on in the West, so his fatwa and his religious opinion isn't valid. Now, that is wrong, because that doesn't take away these things. What he's doing is taking away one thing and saying because he doesn't have that, he doesn't have the rest, which is wrong. In that scenario, what we would need to do is explain the situation to the Sheikh so that he can give you a more comprehensive answer, rather than saying, well, he won't understand anyway, so let's forget him, let's create our own. That doesn't make sense. But in certain scenarios, yes. Like, for example, one of the mashayikh, he was asked about women's rights, etc., and he just couldn't understand it. He was like, well, what is equality and those kind of things? And he's like, well, how can a woman be equal as man? And how can they have the same rights? How can they have the same gender roles? And he just couldn't get around it, And then his answers became less dalil based and more, I can't say emotional based, but it just became, like, well, if they don't like it, then they have to put up with it, that kind of thing. And that's not scholarly, is it? You know what I'm trying to say? So that shows the level of frustration that was there in the individual. So the point here now is that, yes, okay, there may be certain individuals that don't understand, but doesn't necessarily mean that's typical for all of them. There are people that do understand. We have got, alhamdulillah, scholars that come from different Muslim countries, and they come here on a regular basis. Some of them even know English. So, I mean, I don't think we can say that and generalize that they don't know what's going on. If you don't, and this is one of the things that we'll see here also, if one person has not given an answer that you are satisfied with, you don't have to accept the ijtihad. In that scenario, what do? You ask somebody else. Respecting the scholars and the people of virtue, giving precedence to them over others, giving respect to their sittings, making apparent their honor and virtues. This is actually the title that the Shaykh has written himself. That's how lengthy he has put this chapter title. And in this he has put down a hadith where the Prophet ﷺ is saying that the senior is the one who, the senior to Islam, the person who accepted Islam before anybody else, not in age, but in accepting Islam and in accepting Hijrah, in other narrations, should be the one that leads the Salah. Where's the point and evidence in this? The person who becomes Muslim before another person who becomes Muslim after should be the one who leads the Salah before. Why? He has more knowledge. He has more knowledge, and he has, has more virtue in his deeds because of that level of knowledge. So therefore, he is the one who should be leading the Salah.
So someone who precedes you in knowledge, not in...
Knowledge, exactly, yeah. Knowledge, yeah. But at that time, the Prophet ﷺ was talking about those people who accepted Islam. And another narration is talking about those people who made hijrah before. But obviously all those things are now eradicated. But that principle remains the same, wherein that a person who has more knowledge and more action and more piety should be the one who leads the salah because of virtue of his ilm and the one that is acting upon it. Hadith 349, let those nearest to me are those people who are mature and who have the highest of understanding. So not only is the imam the one who should lead, the one who has more knowledge and virtue and ilm and action, but the people in the front saf should be those people who are closest to the imam because of that virtue. 350, let those people nearest to me are who are mature and possess religious knowledge, and those who are nearest to them in these respects. So now the Prophet ﷺ is talking about the closest to the closest. So the front saf, the second saf, and the third saf, etc. Another hadith, a group visited the Prophet ﷺ, and the youngest began to speak. Now we have to remember, towards the end of the life of the Prophet ﷺ, people were visiting the Prophet ﷺ and the Masjid al-Nabawi in their family. So your family will come, 50 of you, 60 of you, all of you will come and say, Rasulullah, we are here to accept Islam. So some of them came, and the youngest members of the family started speaking. The Prophet ﷺ refused to speak to them, and he said, Kabbir, Kabbir, like the elders. And from this we can learn at least two very important lessons. Number one, is not allowed to take knowledge from people who are not known to study with the ulama. Now where do we learn this? The Prophet ﷺ has taken this as a general cultural guide that we give respect to the elders, but also this applies to ilm. This applies to ilm, that we take knowledge from the senior scholars before anybody else, and we give them preference and precedence. And also Ibn Mas'ud, there's another thing that we learned from this hadith, that Ibn Mas'ud said on a separate occasion that people will remain upon goodness as long as they keep taking knowledge and studying and gaining their fatwa from their elders, from the senior scholars. And if they start taking it from the younger ones, that's when the worst of people, that's when they will be destroyed. That's when they will be destroyed. So what we learn from just one sentence from the Prophet ﷺ is that we have respect for our elders, and because of their level of maturity, the level of ikhlas, the level of experience, the level of wisdom, that's who we should refer to, even in our dunyawi matters. But when it comes to ilm, and when it comes to the religion, that takes even more of a precedence. So again, going back to that YouTube thing, we've got many people on YouTube posting different things. Why would you need to do that when the Prophet ﷺ has told us stick to the senior scholars? And there are many of them, alhamdulillah. It doesn't necessarily need to be from one particular country, but that is the general principle. Hadith number 352 is the hadith of Jabir, who said, after the battle of Uhud, the Messenger of Allah arranged the burial of the martyrs in one grave. So now, so many people died and were martyred at the battle of Uhud, they had to dig a pit to bury them. They weren't able to dig individual graves because there were so many casualties. So what they did is they dug two pits. And when the Prophet ﷺ was telling them to bury them, he said, the one that knows the most Qur'an should be led in first. The one that knows the most Qur'an should be led in first. Again, with similar message to what we've seen with the person leading the salah, but this again shows you the level of virtue of the Qur'an. So who should go first, me or you? The person who has more ilm, the person who has more action. From this we learn also that books must be respected. One of the famous Hanbali scholars said it is haram to lean or place things above the mushaf. If this is a person who is buried because he has Qur'an in his heart, what about reverence and respect given to ilm itself? So he is saying here, it's haram to lean or place things upon the mushaf. Likewise the books of knowledge which have Qur'an in it. But then there's another benefit that we gain from this. If the books of knowledge don't have any ayat in it, or have only a few ayat in it, and this now includes us, if it is in English, not in Arabic, then it's not Qur'an per se. It's not the mushaf itself, then it becomes makruh. And this is the level of, intricacy that they've given to fiqh and the respect that they should be given to knowledge, the scholars and the books of knowledge. Hadith number 353, it was shown to me in my dream that I was cleaning my teeth with miswak, and two men came to me. One was elder than the other, and I gave the miswak to the younger one, but I was asked to give it to the elder one, is which what I did. And when the Prophet ﷺ said that two men came to me, normally these are the malaika. So two men came to the Prophet ﷺ, angels, and he was brushing his teeth and he gave it to the younger one, but the Prophet ﷺ in himself, in his own dream, was instructed to give it to the one who was senior. Hadith 354 is out of reverence to Allah in respecting an aged Muslim. And the one who commits the Qur'an, who commits to the Qur'an and memorizing it, and doesn't exaggerate in pronouncing its letters or forget it after he has memorized it, and respect to the just ruler. So now the Prophet ﷺ is talking about who those people we should be giving reverence to and respect to after our parents. That was the very first question that we asked. And here is your explicit answer. The Prophet ﷺ said, give respect to the person who has most knowledge and has grown old in this. Then those people who have memorized the Qur'an. Then those people who have memorized and continue memorizing and upholding it in its correct manner. And then the just ruler. Hadith 355, he is the one, he is not of us who shows no mercy to the younger and doesn't acknowledge the honor given to the elders. 356, again similar message. 356, a beggar asked Aisha radiallahu anha once for charity, and she gave him a piece of bread. Thereafter, one well-dressed person asked her for charity, and she invited it to sit down and serve him food. When she was asked for this, the reason why she did this and the different treatment that she gave to those two individuals, she said the Messenger of Allah instructed us to treat people according to their status. What do we get from this? The beggar that came, what he was expecting was to receive some sadaqah. That's what he was receiving. That's what he expected. She gave him what he expected. A well-dressed person came, a person with honor and dignity. What did she do? She prepared meal for him, she sat him down, she gave him, invited him, and spoke to him nicely. And now you see the hikmah of Aisha radiallahu anha. The Prophet ﷺ told us to treat people according to their level of status and nobility. The Prophet ﷺ also said in a separate hadith, from the signs of the hour, people will take knowledge from their younger ones. And what does that mean? I mean, we talked about that before, and we see a lot of hadith here talking about the senior, the elder. What does that actually mean? Does that mean by age, or does that mean by maturity? And the Prophet ﷺ has said that it's a sign of the hour where people will be on YouTube looking for ilm. Not explicitly, but this is what he's saying, that they take knowledge from the younger ones. They're not very particular about where they take knowledge from. As long as it's something that is appealing to them, that's what they will take. But that's why we had that introduction, which is very, very important. What is ilm? Who is a scholar? How can we externally recognize a scholar? And the Prophet ﷺ is telling us that if we stop engaging in ilm in that manner, then be ready for the hour. Ibn Qutayba, one of those from the Salaf, said that the younger here means in terms of age and nurturing, in wisdom, not necessarily in terms of ilm. So a person could be very, very young, but he could be wise, and he could have a lot of ilm, and he could have attained a lot of ilm. That doesn't necessarily mean that we don't take knowledge from him, and that's not what the Prophet ﷺ is talking about. Lalikai, may Allah have mercy on him, also said, it means that those people who haven't matured in knowledge, he might even have some knowledge, but they don't have that wisdom, they don't have that reality, they don't have those characteristics that we have seen before, where they're able to look at betterment, they're looking at, if I say this, or if we give this fatwa, it will create hardship, it will create people to, deviate, etc. Maturity and wisdom is very, very important, and this is what the Prophet ﷺ is talking about. It's not about age. 357 Ibn Abbas radiallahu anhu narrated that Uyayna ibn Hisn came to Al-Madinah. He stayed with the nephew Al-Hur ibn Qais, who was among those who were very close to Umar radiallahu anhu, and he had access to his counsel. So Umar radiallahu anhu used to consult this person. The scholarly persons, where they were old and young, had the privilege of joining this council. So Umar one time said, why don't you come and let us sit with you and you join us, etc. So they sat, and Uyayna came to the presence of Umar radiallahu anhu, and he addressed him. He said, O son of Khattab, you neither bestow much on us, nor deal with us justly. So Umar radiallahu anhu got angry and was about to beat Al-Hur, when he said, O leader of the believers, Allah has said to His Prophet ﷺ, show forgiveness, enjoin what is good, and turn away from the foolish, meaning myself, me, I am foolish. I am not of that level of, yes, I am on that level of book knowledge, but that level of maturity and wisdom was not there. This is what, I'm one of the ignorant ones. By Allah, when Al-Hur recited this, Umar became motionless in his seat, and he adhered strictly to the book of Allah. So this clearly shows you a practical example of how a younger one can cause a lot of corruption, and what that younger one actually means in that context. Just finish this before you ask your question. 358, Abu Sa'id Samura ibn Jundub reported, I was a boy during the lifetime of the Prophet ﷺ, and he used to commit to my memory, what he said. So he had memorized this. But I do not narrate what I preserved, because there was amongst those people who were elder than me. People amongst his society were elder and had more knowledge. Even though he had that knowledge, out of respect to them, he didn't want to speak above them. If a young man honors an older man on account of his age, Allah appoints someone to show reverence to him in his old age. And this is from the Sunnah of Allah. This is from the Sunnah of Allah. That you respect those people who are elder. When it's your turn, Allah will cause dignity and honor to be given to you, and respect also. Nabil.
Sheikh, you talked about YouTube and necessarily taking up YouTube, but does that mean, for example, because there's a lot of following in doing yourself to put, for example, these kind of lessons on YouTube, and they could be beneficial to a lot of people. So, I know what you meant, but just kind of clarify.
Just to clarify, what we mean by YouTube or any other platform, we're talking about it as being a search engine, where a person just types in whatever and just starts searching forever. I mean, there's a lot of du'at, even people who are, graduates, etc. They're not senior in their knowledge, but they can give you the access to the ulama, and they can contextualize the things that the ulama have said. So those things are praiseworthy, and you know what you're looking for when you are looking at YouTube and all those other platforms that are there. But if you use it as a search engine, then that's very, very dangerous. To summarize this, students should do their best. All of us, Muslims, should do their best according to their ability, and have ikhlas, number one. Give up sins, number two. Start having an interaction with ilm and the scholars, with the Quran. Start pondering on it, start repeating it, and have a way where you can see yourself grow. YouTube would stunt your growth, if you're using it as a search engine. You really need to have a syllabus, and this is one of the things that the Salaf were very, very eager in establishing, even at that very early age of Islam, where they used to write poems, or they used to write a very, very basic matan, maybe a few pages to explain one chapter or one discipline of Islam. The disciplines of Islam are obviously very, very vast, but what they would do is they'd summarize it for you in a few pages. Why? So that you yourself will have a syllabus, so that you'll be able to digest those things in an easy manner and then move on upwards. But that can only come about if this cycle is repeated. Ikhlas, giving it importance, pondering, repeating, gaining and benefiting, but doing it in a systematic manner. The next chapter that the Shaykh brings is visiting the people of goodness. Not necessarily the scholar, but obviously the scholar. But those people who are of piety and goodness, sitting with them, being with them, loving them, asking to visit them, seeking their dua, and going to places of virtue. Now, this is very important, because now what we learn from this is that, your friendship and how you spend your time is going to dictate your level of ikhlas and your actions and the level of ilm and dunya and akhirah you expose yourself to. Now, if you are going around, on some days you're attending some durus, and on other days you're doing something else, and that's going to decrease your level of iman, then there is something wrong, You're just swimming to keep your head above water. But what the Shaykh is saying here is what we need to do is seek an increase of that. not necessarily a scholar, but seek to visit places of goodness, sittings of goodness, loving those people of goodness, attaching yourself and visiting them and engaging in worship with them and going to those places of virtue, because that is going to increase you in your iman and goodness. This is also, we learn from this also, is that the Shaykh is mentioning here, Imam al-Nawawi, that dua is very important, and from this we can understand that Ahl Sunnah don't have a problem with tawassul. We don't have a problem with halal and permissible types and recommended types, and even maybe even wajib types of tawassul. So this is another misconception that people say, that you Wahhabis don't believe in tawassul, you Wahhabis don't give respect to ulama, you Wahhabis don't give respect to ulama after they pass away, Rasulullah after he's passed away. No, we say no, there are certain guidelines and conditions that you need to take, but we are not saying that you can't visit and love and be attached to those people whilst they are alive and able to benefit you. That's not the case, but there are conditions for tawassul. Allah says in Surah Kahf, now he's talking about the story of Musa and Khidr, and this is a long one, and you know that there's at least 2 pages talking about how Musa alayhi salam himself did everything here within that context of the story. Visiting the people of goodness, he travelled and he wanted to sit, he wanted to benefit, he wanted to love, he asked Khidr questions, he wanted his dua, and he wanted to be in the place of barakah. And some of the ulama have even been narrated from the Salaf in saying that we used to honour the sittings of ilm and being amongst the ulama like birds were sitting on our head. What does that mean? It means they were not moving. There was the amount of focus and attention and reverence and love they had for that interaction that they had is as if that a bird can come and sit on their head as if they were a statue. And it's also been narrated that some of the ulama, as time went on, when that started to decrease, that level of respect and interaction, they used to actually even walk out. They even actually used to walk out. And it's been narrated that one of the Salaf, that a person was sharpening his pencil or his writing instrument in the lesson. The Shaykh, mid-lesson, took his shoes and he walked out. And he said, what am I going to do if people are not ready and they won't take ilm seriously? Then I'm not here in a position. And one of our mashayikh actually, his lesson used to be 3 hours long. 3 hours long, from Maghrib until late at night. And one time, the mobile phone kept going off from different places. There were hundreds of people there, a mobile phone there, mobile phone there. And the reader is reading and the Shaykh is explaining. And when the mobile phone goes off, he stops and he says, please switch your mobile off. It happened 3, 4, 5 times. Until it happened to a person that was right in front of him. The mobile phone went off. The Shaykh stopped. He was talking, he stopped. He asked him in front of hundreds of people, who's on your phone? Who's on your phone? Is it an important phone call? Is it your mother? Is it your wife? And the guy said nothing. And he got off. And that was only half an hour into the lesson. He said the dua, the kafarat al-majlis, and he walked off. And the next week he spent about 20 minutes rebuking the people. He said, listen, if you're not going to take it seriously, then you're not going to gain anything. You're only going to gain something if you're here. And if you're not here, then just forget the rest of it. If you're not going to take it seriously, then forget the rest of it. What's the point in having a syllabus? What's the point when you come in to different usul al-thalath, aqidah class, hadith class, and you're not going to do any of these things? And this is a precedence that's been set by the Salaf. Waqi used to do this, Abdurrahman al-Azdi used to do this. Another ayah, again from Surah Al-Kahf, where Allah is commanding the Prophet ﷺ to remain patient in the majalis, morning and evening of those people, what? Yuriduna wajha. Ikhlas. They want that fadl, they want that goodness so they can enrich themselves in their in iman and piety so that they can become better people. They can walk away out of this majlis and have an effect on other people and think about when are they going to go back and have another majlis where they can become better and grow. That's the whole point of Islam, really, isn't it? That you want to die in a state where you've got firm and strong iman, that you're ready to go to Jannah. How are you going to do? That's not going to happen spontaneously. That's not going to happen. I'm on my deathbed right now. I'm going to go for Hajj and, I'm about to die and I'm going to fast all my Ramadan, all my Qadha Salah. I'm going to do it right now. It doesn't work like that. It doesn't work like that. And if you think it's going to work like that, then you've not got the objective of worship. The objective of worship is that you have a connection with Allah and that you are pleased with Him as your Lord and He ends up being pleased with you. And Allah is telling us here, وَلَا تَعْدُ عَيْنَاكَ أَنْهُمْ تُرِيدُ زِينَةَ الْحَيَاةِ الدُّنْيَا. Don't stretch your eyes. Look at what Allah is saying here. Don't stretch your eyes. Don't look far and say, like, look how much of the dunya that they've got. They've got this. Because all they want is something which is going to pass. And if you do that, what will happen to your hearts? Your hearts will be devoid of this. You will have ghafla, as Allah is talking about. Ghafla means negligence. There will be no ikhlas. There will be no giving up of sins. There will be no pondering. Allah tells you in ayah, and one of the barakah that we gain from each surah is that every time you read it, you can gain more benefits. Every time you read it, you could read it for the whole of your life, and you will be able to learn something new, even from the smallest of surahs. Repetition, pondering, and having a syllabus for yourself. Allah is saying, if you do that, then what's going to happen is that you're going to have your hearts sealed with negligence, and you will end up following your own desires. And that's what will make you satisfied. That's what will make you happy. Your own desires. Your own mobile phone, your own attachment to the dunya, your own cars, your own, whatever your desires are. That's what becomes of you. Ali bin Talib said, the masajid are the place of sitting of the prophets and the protection from shaitan. And this fits in nicely with this. Visiting the people of goodness, sitting in the places of goodness, sitting in the places of khair, and loving those people of goodness and those places of goodness. Anas bin Malik reported after the death of Prophet ﷺ, Abu Bakr said to Umar, let's visit Ayman. Does anybody know who Ayman actually is? She is one of the aunts of the Prophet ﷺ, and the Prophet ﷺ used to actually visit her after she accepted Islam, and she wanted him, and she would invite him to sleep over. And what she would do with his sweat from the pillow, she used to make musk from it, perfume. And she used to say that, wallahi, there's no scent better than even the sweat of the Rasul. The Prophet ﷺ used to visit her, and she was an elderly woman, and she was a widow, and the Prophet ﷺ used to visit her on a regular basis. Make sure she's okay, is everything okay, is there anything I can do for you, etc. Abu Bakr said to Umar, after the Prophet ﷺ has passed away, who's going to visit her? Let's continue this tradition for the sake of our love for Rasulullah and the sunnah that he left behind. As we came to her, we knocked on her door, and we went inside the house. And this clearly teaches what we talked a couple of weeks ago. Islam doesn't say that you can't interact with opposite gender. These people are not mahram for her anymore. Prophet ﷺ was. These people aren't. So there is a level of interaction, and it's not that we are saying that we have to isolate ourselves in gender. And they found her weeping. She was crying. So not only was she not only was she talking to her, but she was actually even showing her emotions to people who are not mahram. She was weeping. So they said to her, why are you crying? What makes you weep? Don't you know that the Prophet ﷺ has gone and now he's in a better place, etc. This is within the context of them visiting her after the Prophet ﷺ has passed away. And now they've come to visit her. So they think, now, because we are visiting her, she's remembering Rasulullah. Like, Rasulullah used to visit me, but now his friends are visiting me instead. So in order to console her and calm her down, they said, don't you know that he is now in a better place? She said, that's not why I'm crying, wallahi. That is not the reason why I'm crying. I'm not ignorant of the fact that the Prophet ﷺ is now in a better place. The reason why I'm crying is because of this chapter title. The visiting of the goodness has stopped. Sitting with the people of goodness has stopped. Being with them, loving them, asking them, seeking the dua, and going to the places of goodness has stopped. What was her reply? I'm crying because revelation from above the arsh of Rahman has ceased to come down in our city. And now you coming here to visit me is a signaling of that. And then what happened? Abu Bakr and Umar both began to weep as well. Hassan al-Basri said, the entire world is a darkness. If you think that these majalis and these people who are going to make you a better person, who are going to enrich you, people are going to take you away from your own desires and your own shackles of sin and shaitan overcoming you, then that is a big mistake. Hassan al-Basri said that the entire world is a darkness. Where is the nur? It's in the sittings with the ulama. And that nur then can become part of your life as you carry on in your daily life. But what you need to do is still be connected with that ikhlas, with that repetition, with that pondering, with that syllabus. What we learn from this also now, Imam al-Nawawi brings a different tangent, he's bringing another subtitle, so to speak, virtues of good friendship and being with them. A man set out to visit his brother in faith in another town, and what happened was that he was visiting his friend for the sake of Allah. While he was walking, and don't get me wrong, this doesn't necessarily mean that this happened at that time and it can't happen now. Is it possible that an angel can come now and test you and speak to you? It's definitely possible. It's definitely happened. It happened within the period of Bani Israel, where there was no direct Nabi to tell them that this was, and the Prophet ﷺ told us afterwards that these people were tested by this angel. So this angel approached this man, and he said that, where are you going, what are you doing? And he said, I'm going to visit my brother in another city for the sake of Allah. He goes, is there a favor that you want from him? Is there something that you're going to get in return? Is there anything except for the sake of Allah? He said, no, by Allah, I have no desire except to visit him for the sake of Allah Jalla wa Ala. Thereupon the angel said, I am a messenger sent to you from Allah, and I am here to inform you that Allah loves you as you have loved him for Allah's sake. If this is just an ordinary brother, then what about those people who are going to actually make you better people? Hadith 362, whoever visits an ailing person or a brother of his to seek the pleasure of Allah, an announcer calls, an angel from the unseen will make dua for you. May you be happy, may your walking be blessed, and may you be awarded with a dignified position in Jannah. May Allah make us of them. Hadith 363, the similitude of good company and bad company, I'm sure you've heard this hadith, is like the person who is carrying perfume and another person who is a blacksmith. If your company is good, then what's going to happen is that he is either going to give you some perfume for free, he's going to give you a gift, or you are able to buy it from him so you have access to this khayr, or at the very least you are left with a nice smelling scent, and you will remember that goodness that that person has left you with. But if a person is smoking drugs, or the person is smoking cigarettes, or the person is, involved in different types of intoxication, either he might spill it on you, or he might get on your clothes, or he might, put ash on your clothes, or at the very least, leave you with a bad smell of cigarette smell for the rest of your day. That's the similitude that the Prophet ﷺ has given between good and bad company. But how true is this? Now, if you think about what's happened, this is one of the benefits that we got from the Shaykh who left after 30 minutes. This is one of the benefits that he gave us. Those who sat with the Prophet ﷺ, what happened to them? They got named as the Sahaba. Those people then, after the Sahaba who sat with them, they got named the Tabi'een. Then those people, the Sahabas, and those people who sat after them, they got known as the Atba' Tabi'een, and there we have the foundation of the four schools of thought. This is the virtue of sitting with ulama. This is the label. It's not about labels. It's not about you walking away and say, look, he called me this, he called me that. It's not about that. But it's about the virtue that Allah can put into you without you even knowing that this is what's going to happen. 364. A woman is married for four things. What she married for? Either her wealth, or her lineage, or her beauty, or her piety. And the Prophet ﷺ said, choose the piety, may you be blessed. Is the Prophet ﷺ giving us an option of four? Or is he saying, choose the fourth one? People have that understanding where the Prophet ﷺ either marry her for this, or marry her for that, or marry her for that, or all of that is jaiz. That's not what he's saying. He's saying, marry her for this. Yes, obviously, you have to have a level of attachment and compatibility and those kind of things. Don't get me wrong. Islam is not saying that you get married to someone that you're not compatible, but she's pious and you're pious, and then you end up getting divorced because she likes tuna and you don't like seafood. It's not about that. The point here is that you live with each other in a good manner, but that foundation should be built on piety. And this is for the brothers looking for sisters, but there are many ayat and hadith which talk about sisters seeking the same thing. Prophet ﷺ said in a hadith, if a man comes to you and his akhlaq is good and his deen is good, then marry him. If you don't do that, what will happen? It will create corruption in society. Or fasad and arid, in some of the narrations say, a corruption which will envelop the whole of the dunya. And that's so true, because now we're living in that scenario, unfortunately. We're living in that scenario where people don't want to get married to another person. He's pious, she's pious, but he's the wrong skin color, or he has got an accent, and wallah, it's a mess. 365, the Prophet said to Jibreel, what prevents you from visiting us more frequently? Thereupon an ayah was revealed. The angels say, and we angels do not descend except by the command of our Lord. The Prophet ﷺ was asking, why don't you come and visit us more? The Prophet ﷺ is telling Jibreel, come and visit us more. We want your companionship more. Again, going back to the chapter title, the ayah was revealed in Surah Maryam that the angels can only come down if there is a command of Allah. They can't come down and give you that virtue with you just wanting it. 366, keep friends with only a believer, and only share your food with those people who are pious, because that's where the barakah. Now, he's using this to talk about towards the latter part where you are visiting and you are seeking their dua and you're going to the places of virtue. Because the Prophet ﷺ has told us in certain narrations that when you are eating and when you are sharing, that's when the mercy descends. So if you are sharing and you are sharing your food and you are showing compassion to one another and you are all pious, that's when divine mercy will be multiplied and there will be barakah in that. 367, a man follows the religion of his friends, so you should be careful who you take as your friends. Ibn Qayyim rahimahullah said, meeting your brother is of two scenarios. Any kind of person that you meet is of two scenarios. Either, and this is I've put in my own words so that we can digest it better within our 21st century context. For the sake of socializing, you only want to visit that person for the sake of having a laugh, or talking about the latest football game, or talking about the latest art or fashion. I don't know what people visit each other for. This corrupts the heart and it wastes your time. What are you going to get? You talk about football for 2, 3, 4 hours, talking about food for 2, 3, 4 hours, talking about shares and house prices. People do all this kind of stuff all the time. Don't get me wrong, you have to use your dunya for the akhirah. You have to. But where is that? Now the Shaykh is giving us another example. Meeting and cooperation for success. Now success could be something that's going to benefit you in your dunya. I meet my brother so he can help me revising certain things so that I can pass my exam, and then I can fulfill my, my duties as being a good professional. This means a gain of success. Greatest of booty is gained from this, where there are three slippery stuff. Even if you've got ikhlas, be careful. Because you can meet your brother with ikhlas, but then you are attracted to the other person. You praise him too much, you depend on him too much, you have an attachment with him too much, and this is what happens when people become friends. They'll listen to their friends over their family. They'll listen to their friends over their own ration. Sometimes you go there for the sake of Allah, but then there becomes a lot of idleness, a lot of, digression, there's a lot of, too much speech, which is not beneficial. Ibn Qayyim is telling us this. How true is this? 700-800 years ago he said that. And he says, desires can overcome the actual objective. So now you've gone there for the sake of Allah, but now instead of, you're doing actually something which is going to benefit you because of 1 and 2, or maybe not because of 1 and 2 necessarily, something else becomes the objective. And this is the case when it comes to our cooperation with one another, but it's the case with every single aspect of Islam. You want to pray salat, but you go to a particular person because of his voice, not necessarily because of, the fact that he's a person who is of knowledge and the person that you should be given preference to in praying salah. Or, you go there and you have a majalis of ilm, but then it becomes too much speech. He said, she said, etc. Or it could be that you start, for the sake of Allah, I'm going to pray 2 rak'ats. But then you start, your ikhlas is gone, your khushu is gone, you start thinking about something completely different tangent. Therefore, Ibn Qayyim concludes, the soul is affected by either good or bad. That's just the summary. That's the blunt summary. Your soul is either going to be attracted to what is good or what is bad. Now what you have to do is, what you're tasked with every single day is to think about yourself and to ponder and to realize with ikhlas, where are you going with this? Why are you doing this action? Where am I going to go with that action? What's my next move for today? And this can only come about if you've got a syllabus. But wallahi al-azim, if you wake up in the morning and you don't have an objective for that day, then that day more than likely is going to be wasted, or your maximum potential is not going to be fulfilled. So if you think, wake up in the morning, not necessarily syllabus in your learning, but if you think, wake up in the morning, right, class, I'm going to wait for Fajr. After Fajr, I'm going to recite some Quran. And then after that, I might go back to sleep. Then I'll wake up and then have some breakfast. And then you have a systematic approach to your day. Some of it, most of it's going to be dunya, definitely. Yeah, your family have rights over you, your work has rights over you, your studies have rights. But then you isolate some of that time, half an hour, 45 minutes, and you will find that grow in barakah in itself. You will find yourself, and this is an advice that we got from Sheikh Saaleheen directly. Somebody asked him, he goes, listen, I work for 10 hours a day, and then I sleep for 8, and then I come home and then I have to, be with my family, and then there's salah and all those things. My time is gone. How can I be a studious talib al-ilm? I'm able to benefit here and there, but there's no, systematic approach to my life. The Shaykh said, what he said? He goes, all you need to do right now is get yourself 1 hour. Nobody can say that they haven't got an hour a day. You've got an hour a day. Even whether it's before you go to sleep, or whether it's early in the morning, whether it's middle of the day, everybody's, scenario is different. Give yourself an hour. And then he said, in that hour, half an hour dedicated to the Quran. Understanding Arabic, and he was talking about hifz and tafsir, but obviously we are far behind that because we need to learn the Arabic, etc. But once you do that habitually, the Shaykh himself said, guaranteed, and he goes, this is personal experience. After 1 month, after 2 months, you will find yourself grow, definitely. Half an hour, but you have to stick to it. Half an hour, Quran. 15 minutes, Aqidah, 15 minutes, fiqh. These are the most important things that you need in your life in a Muslim. Yeah? You need to have the connection with the kalam of your Lord. Definitely. You're not going to go anywhere without that. And then, your belief. And then, some practical Islam. As in, am I doing what I'm doing right? I don't know. Is it right? Is it something I can improve on? If you do that systematically, then definitely you will see an improvement. And this is what the Shaykh is saying here. Either you attract yourself to good, or you attract yourself to bad. And if you start digressing, then there are too many slippery slopes. Hadith 368, a person will be summoned with the one who he loves, Yawm al-Qiyamah. If you love being with those people who are organized, you can maybe even help organize one another. You can maybe meet up, sometimes during the week and, benefit one another and say, what did you learn in these last 4 or 5 days? Benefit me from this and I can benefit you from that. And the Prophet ﷺ said that those people who you try to aspire to and those people who you're connected with, those are the people who you will be raised with Yawm al-Qiyamah. Now, I'm asking you a genuine question. You have to be truthful to yourself. Who is it that you love the most after Allah? Is it Rasulullah or is it not? Is it genuinely? Now, when you wake up in the morning or when you wake up in the middle of the night, the first thing you think about would give you an indication as to who that person actually is. Is it a football match that you watched last night? Is it, oh, I wish she scored the goal like that? Is it, why did she wear her hair like that and not like that? This is the answer to your question. And this, the Prophet ﷺ has said, guaranteed. He doesn't speak from his desires. He's never lied in his life. This man has never lied in his life. He is not lying about this. Yawm al-Qiyamah, these are the people who you genuinely love. Allah knows, and Allah will expose you on that day or recompense you on that day. These are the people that you'll be with on Yawm al-Qiyamah. And you know that. You know yourself better than that. A Bedouin came to the Messenger of Allah 369 and said to him, when is the hour? Tell me, so I can get ready for it. So the Prophet ﷺ knew that this is what he was saying. So he said, instead of you asking me what time Allah is going to call it an end, well, how much have you prepared for it? Isn't that better? Instead of saying, all right, when I get to 69 years old, that's when I'm going to start praying 5 times a day, and I'm making it a guarantee for myself. 69 years of abuse. Akhi, listen, a person smokes 40 cigarettes a day for 50 years. What's going to happen? Is he going to get more health or bad health? Obviously he's going to get heart disease. Obviously he's going to get clogged up. Obviously his heart's going to become hard with cancer and all these other things. What is telling me for 69 years or 50 years or even 5 years of no salat, no connection to Allah, that your heart is going to become soft for you to become and make tawbah and become of something when the time when you think you need it? Is that possible? That makes sense. It doesn't make sense scientifically. What have you prepared for it? Why are you asking about when I'm going to die? What are you doing right now? So he said, the only thing I prepared for it is that I love Allah and His Messenger. So the Prophet ﷺ said, you will be with Cristiano Ronaldo. You will be with whoever that person is. So as long as you prepare, then that's how you will be raised. 370, O Messenger of Allah, what do you think of a man who loves some people, but does not go anywhere near his position, as in his deeds? So I love Abu Bakr, I love Umar, but we are nowhere near it. The Prophet ﷺ said there's glad tidings, because Yawm al-Qiyamah, you'll be with them. The Prophet ﷺ said, like this, those people who sponsor the orphans. You'll be like that with Rasulullah. The Prophet ﷺ said, if you say, Raditu billahi rabban, wa bi islami din, wa Muhammad sallallahu alayhi wa sallam nabiyyin, 3 times, morning and evening, the Prophet ﷺ said, you will not go to Jannah except I will hold your hand and take you to Jannah myself. You'll be with Rasulullah. 371, people are like gold and silver. Those who are best in Jahiliyyah are the best in Islam. If, this is the condition, if what? So I'm very strong in my Jahiliyyah. Everyone scared me. The guy was a bad man. He was driving a BMW. He had all the Stone Island jackets. And he was people everybody was scared of. When he becomes Muslim, if he continues that level of enthusiasm, he will become the best of the believers. But what is that condition? The Prophet ﷺ said, if he is connected to those people who have khair. If. And we find this time again. People have had a very bad past. They start growing a beard and they start practicing Islam, but their Jahiliyyah is still kind of in them. And the souls are like recruited soldiers. Your soul, my soul, are attracted to other souls throughout the creation of Allah. And I say the creation of Allah because the ulama have derived from this that you could be attached to a soul which is in Jannah right now. So it could be from the grace of Allah, and this is nothing strange, that you could be sleeping in your bed, the angels from the grace of Allah come and take your soul, and you mix with that person of goodness in Jannah. Is it possible for you to see Rasulullah? Is it possible for you to see Abu Bakr and Umar in your dream? Is it possible? I'm asking. Of course it is. Why is that? Because your souls and the souls of those people who believe are like recruited soldiers. They get mixed up with those who are similar to them in quality and oppose those people who drift away from them in those qualities. Your soul is attracted to those souls that are like. So if you strong iman, weak iman, weak iman, no iman, mixed iman. Ibn Hazm, rahimahullah, he said, the people of ignorance and the people who have knowledge have made me happy twice in my life and made me angry twice in my life. Ibn Hazm, rahimahullah. The people of ignorance have made me angry twice in my life because when I was ignorant, they had nice words for me when I was ignorant. And when I became knowledgeable and after I studied, they didn't want to support me, they were quiet. What does this teach us? That Ibn Hazm is saying that you can only reinforce ilm and taqwa and iman and all that quality if you do it together. But from the sunnah of Allah, and this is one thing that we all need to take away, if you do not want to seek to rectify yourself by Allah, this is a promise from Allah, and this is history will prove this to you. It's not my statement. If you do not want that connection with Allah, then Allah will take that away from you, and He will take that connection and He'll put it in someone that's better. It's a promise from Allah. And this is what Ibn Hazm is saying also. When I was jahil, the people who were also jahil, they didn't try and teach me anything. And then when I became an alim, when I had knowledge and I was able to teach and etc., nobody supported me. But the people of knowledge have pleased me twice in my life. Because they taught me when I was ignorant. And I had that attachment with them in ilm and the halaqat and the dua and the places of virtue, etc. And by revision in my days of knowledge. And this is going back to that point where we were talking about earlier. Ikhlas, pondering, revision, syllabus. 372, Usayr ibn Amr reported when delegations came from Yemen, and Umar radiallahu anh asked about a man called Uwais ibn Amir al-Qarni. And I'm sure you've heard about this story. So he kept asking, in the time the Prophet ﷺ passed away, Umar was the Amir al-Mu'minin. Whenever a caravan came from Yemen, he used to ask, is there a man called Uwais ibn Amir with you? Is there a man called Uwais ibn Amir? One time, he met a person called Uwais ibn Amir. And Umar radiallahu anh went up to him and he said, make istighfar for me. You make istighfar for me. What do we gain from this? The chapter title, the Prophet, the Shaykh is saying that you should ask for istighfar and dua from those people who are righteous. And this is what he's extracting from this scenario. So Uwais, he said that how can I make istighfar for you when you're the third person of Islam? You're Amir al-Mu'mineen. You're the person who has the most iman. Shaitan runs away from you. He said that there is a person who believes in me in Yemen, but the reason why he didn't make hijrah to Medina is because he wanted to remain behind with who? The person before this chapter, his mother. He gave precedence to his mother before the people of ilm. Just like Imam al-Nawawi has put this sequence in title of chapters in his Riyadh as-Saaleheen. Because of that, Allah is going to answer his dua and answer his istighfar. So if you meet this person, make sure you make istighfar for him. And when Uwais did that, he wept with joy and humility. 373, Umar ibn Khattab, I sought permission of the Prophet ﷺ to perform Umrah. Umar, at the time the Prophet ﷺ went to make Umrah himself, with the Prophet ﷺ being behind in Medina. What did the Prophet ﷺ say? He said, my brother, do not forget to make dua for us. The Prophet ﷺ said, make dua for me and our companions that you have left behind in Medina. He's saying it to somebody who is lower. The Prophet ﷺ used to visit Quba and he used to pray 2 raka'at there. And what do we gain from this? The Prophet ﷺ used to value the places of virtue, value the places of ilm, the masajid, the people of ilm and honor. The place of Quba were those people who Allah praised directly in the Quran. This is the end of Riyadh as-Saaleheen. Now, if you don't mind, again, I'm sorry, it's going to be quite lengthy today, but certain principles connected to what we were talking about in understanding ilm and ijtihad and taqleed. First of all, what is ijtihad? So now we've just talked about what ilm is and how to recognize the scholar and some of those sifat and characteristics that he needs to be comfortable with himself, but you also enable to recognize him externally. But what is ijtihad? Now this is going back to what the people were asking last week. What do you do if there's this opinion and that opinion? There are certain things which are black and white in Islam, and that is not ijtihad. So, is zina halal? Is khamr halal? Is shirk permissible? Never. That is black and that is white. But ijtihad is defined as something which is not objectively found in the text, but the scholar will use the text and he will use usul and he will use understanding from the text to derive and deduce an opinion. Who does that? The person who had those 5 criteria. What was those 5? Ikhlas. Before that, even before that. We can't measure ikhlas, but the person himself, understanding of the Quran and the Sunnah, knowing the differences of opinion and the matters of ijma. The Arabic language. Number 4, usul al-fiqh. He has to know what is binding and what is not binding, what is abrogated, what is general. And number 5, he has to be free from major sins. That is the scholar who is now able to deduce opinions. So now if you're YouTubing and he said, well, I had such and such person say that, is he a person who's able to do that? That's what you need to ask for yourself. The types of the scholars who are able to do ijtihad. Now this is very important because there are 5 different categories of people who can make ijtihad. But not all of them are mujtahid. So number 1, we have a mujtahid who is mutlaq, who is known as an absolute mujtahid. So this is like Abu Hanifa, Imam Malik, the companions, Abu Bakr, Umar. They were, what is a mujtahid mutlaq? They were people who had their own understanding of Islam and were able to derive their own utensils and maxims to understand and principles to understand Islam. And then with that, they were able to derive their own opinion. So this is my opinion based on how I understand the Quran and the Sunnah. Can we do that now? No. Because most of the scholars, the maximum that you will reach is level number 2. You use the usul that have already been established by the Salaf, but you yourself can come up with your own view. So Imam Muhammad Uthaymeen, Shaykh bin Baz, Shaykh al-Albani, all these scholars, they are using usul that have already been set by scholars before them. They're not setting their own madhab. But they are now able to understand the religion in a way that they think is more correct. So Imam Muhammad Uthaymeen, for example, humbly in his usul, but in his views, many times, maybe not humbly at all. That's the second type. He is known as the mujtahid, which is the mujtahid of wujuh. He has the wajh, he is able to understand it from this way and understand it from that way, etc. The mujtahid of tarjih, and the tarjih is the one who has the usul of the madhab, and he knows the views of the madhab, and he's able to give you the right opinion of the madhab. So Imam Ahmad maybe has sometimes 10 different opinions on one mas'ala. This scholar now is able to understand the Hanbali madhab, understand those 10 views, and he will say, number X, Y, and Z, or number 1, 2, and 3 is the correct opinion because of X, Y, and Z. Now, 1, 2, and 3 are scholars. 1, 2, and 3 are mujtahids. 1, 2, and 3 are the people of fatwa. 1, 2, and 3 are the people of ijtihad. Then you have the mujtahid of not tahriq, the mujtahid of takhrij. I should say takhrij. And takhrij, I'm sorry, it's a bit technical, but just for us to understand, this category of mujtahid now, he has no usul. All he has is the opinions of the madhab, and he's able to give you the correct opinion of the madhab. When you tell him about how did you derive that opinion, and how do you know, he doesn't know. This is X, Y, and Z, this is in the Hanafi madhab, there are 3 opinions. Do you put your finger, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, like that? Do you leave it pointing throughout the whole way? Or do you raise your finger, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, and then leave it pointing throughout the whole way? There's 3 views from the Hanafi madhab. That scholar will say, no, the correct way, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan Rasulullah, and put it back down. Why? I don't know. But these are the views, that's the correct one. So he can't necessarily conclude as to why. He is Ashab al-Takhrij. Then you have the Ashab al-Hifth, is the person who knows all the views, but he's not able to give you the correct one. I don't know. They've said X, Y, and Z, that's it. 4 and 5 are not mujtahids. 4 and 5 are not the people of fatwa. 4 and 5 are only referred to in cases of necessity. So now, genuinely, I don't know how to perform Hajj. I've not got a valid book. I'll go to my local masjid and they'll give me a Hanafi Hajj guide, for example, or Maliki Hajj guide. This is the only thing I've got, so that I'm going to make Hajj in this manner. In that scenario, you're not sinful, because you don't have access to 1, 2, or 3. What does this mean for us now? This means that 1, 2, and 3 are the people of ijtihad and fatwa. They themselves can't depend on the ijtihad of somebody else. Wajib upon them to make their own fatwa and own ijtihad. Now this teaches us something which is very, very important. Bin Baz says one thing, Albani says something else. Can you start dissing one another? No. They are doing what is wajib upon them. Where are you? We're not even on the scale. So how can we even get involved and say, look what Albani said, look what this sheikh said, look what that sheikh said. You can't do that. You have to have a level of respect. Number 4 and 5 are muqallids. They are blind followers. Why? Because they don't understand the evidences. If they don't understand the evidences, why is that important? That is important because they cannot issue fatwa. So if a person's gone to a Darul Uloom and he's come out and he says, well, this is how you pray Salah, for example, or this is how you give zakat, or this is how you do X, Y, and Z. Khayr, why am I doing it in that manner? May I ask? Because you have full entitlement. Because if you are asking person for your akhirah, you have full entitlement to say, well, is there a reasonable reason why I'm doing that? If you feel that the person is telling you something and it makes logical sense because, you know, this seems like it's the deen of Islam, you don't really need to probe any further, then that's fair enough. If you know the person, this is another scenario, if you know the person is basing on the kitab and the sunnah, you don't need to ask him. Fawzan hardly ever gives dalil. Naam yajuz, la yajuz. And that would be his, yes it's permissible, no it's not permissible. Sometimes they'll give you dalil. If a person you do not know, and you've asked him for a fatwa, and then he says, well, this is how it is, then he is a muqallid himself because he didn't understand the dalil, he didn't understand the view. If that's the case, then he cannot give fatwa, because they are only narrating opinions. How do we recognize these 3 categories? Again, we've talked about the characteristics of a scholar. How do we know that a person has reached the level of 1, 2, and 3? Now this is very important. A person wearing a shimag and a bisht, he's got a big beard, he's got a white thobe, he's sitting at the front. Is he the person that should be giving you the fatwa and ijtihad, and the person that should be ready to teach? How do we know? There are at least, that I've put down here, 5 different ways. There's actually more than that. Number 1, the scholars have given that person a recommendation. Some of the ulama have said that they need more than 1 scholar to give a recommendation, but the correct opinion, and all of this is taken from our notes taken from Sheikh Saleh. Some of the scholars have said that they need more than 1 person to say that he's got a recommendation. But the correct opinion is that even if 1 scholar says that, no, he is somebody who is verified, you can take knowledge from him, you can give fatwa, and he's a person of ijtihad, that is sufficient. That is the default way of knowing who the scholar is. But there are other ways. For example, the mufti entrusts him. So, for example, when Sheikh Muqbil passed away, or when he was traveling, he got somebody else and he said, you carry on my dars. That is now a tazkiyah. He doesn't have to be verbal, he's put him in his place. Number 3, a scholar defends him and his views, and the majority have accepted this. So, for example, somebody has said something bad about somebody else, and he said, no, he's not even a scholar, etc. But then another person comes and defends that person. In that way, that person has a way of him being a mujtahid. A scholar shares his view, is another way, and a person actually calls himself a mufti. I am a mufti. Is that sufficient? What do you think? I am an alim, so you can ask me. I have graduated and I've got such and such recommendations. Does that necessarily put him in that position to do so? The answer to that question is no. And the majority rejected it as proof. Because he himself could be calling him a mufti. He could say that, well, I've got this recommendation, or I've graduated from Medina. Wallah, I've met people who have graduated from Medina, and they couldn't explain Hajj properly. And I'm not trying to belittle them, but just to show you that not everybody who has got a recommendation, this includes myself, includes everyone, this isn't safe for us all. Just because you've been given a title, or you've been given doesn't necessarily mean that you are on a broader level. You might have a specific level, or you might even have no level. The ijtihad of a scholar in his presence, this is another qaida now, another principle. If a scholar has made ijtihad, and he is a person who is from 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5, and we know he's from 1, 2, 3, and 4, and 5 because somebody's recommended him, or he's been chosen as a deputy, or he's got certain characteristics that we know of, then what happens if this person makes ijtihad? What happens if such and such person says, well, I think such and such bank transaction is halal, or Islamic finance is halal, etc. Are we allowed to now ridicule that person? I'm not talking about any names, I'm just giving an example. Are we allowed to ridicule that person? No, because he has made legitimate ijtihad. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, in issues of ijtihad, then the statement of a scholar cannot be denounced or abandoned. Abandoned in the sense that you can accept it or you don't have to accept it, but at the very least, recognize that that's his opinion. That's another qaida that we have. Another qaida that we have when it comes to ijtihad. A person can't force, and we talked about this last week, and here's a statement directly. If you hold an opinion, I want to put my hands below my navels. I've only got one navel. If I put my hand below my navel, does that mean you have to do the same? If you don't do that, then you're a mubtadi'. I take from a particular sheikh. If you don't hold that same opinion as me, then you're a mubtadi', then you are somebody who is misguided, etc. That is not allowed. A person, as long as he's taken a religious opinion from a person who is a mujtahid, then you cannot force that ijtihad upon another person. Ibn Taymiyyah, if anyone follows a view based on valid ijtihad, he is not to be denounced. You can't call him a mubtadi', you can't say he's a misguided person, etc. If a person follows what he thinks is likely to be correct, then this is what is wajib upon him. This is what is wajib upon him. We're going to get to that in a minute also. Otherwise, out of necessity, only out of necessity can you make taqleed. Like we've said, the only access I've got is to a particular Hanafi book, or Maliki book, or a taqleedi book. There's no dalil in it on how to make hajj. This is all I've got. In this scenario, it's a necessity. I've got to go hajj tomorrow. This is taqleed out of necessity. Another qaida that we have, one is not allowed to make inkar and denounce matters of ijtihad. If you've got an opinion, and your brother's got another opinion, what you do is you open that channel for dialogue. So if you genuinely think that your opinion is wrong, even though I'm respecting it because you're coming from a scholarly view, and I've got an opinion and I'm coming from a scholarly view, I open a dialogue with you. I say, brother, I think that your opinion is actually weaker. We shouldn't pay 20, we should pay 8. But I respect the view of 20 because it's been said by ulama and, that kind of thing. But 8 is better, it's safer, and, this is the deal from the Prophet, etc. Yeah, Nabi.
In this case, though, there's been many times where scholars, for example, they might disagree on a matter, and one scholar might go that they won't say directly that the other scholars' ijtihad is a bid'ah, but they might say that the concept in which they're arguing against is a bid'ah.
This is very important. This is very important. Right. What do you say after wudu? What's the dua after wudu? After that? Allahumma jalni min at-tawwabin wa jalni min al-mutatahhirin. Many of the ulama have said that this hadith is hasan. Sheikh Saad said that it's a bid'ah. He said that the hadith is weak because Imam al-Tirmidhi has narrated in a way that Imam Muslim didn't narrate it. And Imam al-Tirmidhi narrated it from his teacher, Abu Ja'far. Then that is an anomaly to the rest of the chains. Therefore, that chain is weak. The majority of ulama said, no, there's no problem with that, because the person that Tirmidhi narrated it from is Hasan or Sahih. Therefore, that's an additional piece of information to the other chains that we have, so we can accept it as a whole. What the other scholars have said, no, that's an anomaly. It's not found in the other chains. Therefore, that is weak. If that's weak and you're acting upon it, what are you acting? Have you got dalil to say that? No, it's a bid'ah. So now, bid'ah is of different levels. You can't say, okay, well, I disagree with you because you have no dalil, therefore your action with me is a bid'ah. But does that make you mubtadi'? Does that make you somebody outside of Ahl Sunnah? Does that make somebody that I have a grudge against and an enmity towards? That's not right. You see the point here? Sometimes, so basically, if you've got dalil to do what you're doing, then that's what you think is your dalil. If I think that your dalil is not dalil, or the dalil that you're presented is actually weak, if it is weak, then there is no precedence in the religion for what you're doing. So in my opinion, what you're doing is a bid'ah. So for example, Sheikh Saad said that whoever says Allahumma jalni min tawabin wa jalni min mutahhirin after wudu, that's an innovation. The hadith is weak. And there's many contemporaries who hold that view. Say, ashhadu an la ilaha illallah, ashhadu anna Muhammadan rasulullah, and that's it. The point here is now, there's other scholars who say no, it's sunnah to say Allahumma jalni min tawabin. Other scholars who said that there is no basis because the dalil for it is weak, it's thrown out, it's rejected, therefore there is no dalil to do that action. If you're doing an action which has no dalil, what is it? It's a bid'ah. You've got no dalil. Therefore, that action of saying Allahumma jilni tawabin has no dalil. Therefore, it's an innovation. So now, if I was to do it, and I've actually done it around the Shaykh, he's never called me a mubtadi'. He thinks, in his opinion, that you doing that, it's an innovation. You don't do that after wudu. So, bid'ah is of different levels. Yeah? So now, you might do something that you think you got dalil for, another person says there's no dalil for that, they'll think, okay, that's got no precedence in the religion, therefore it's bid'ah. Bid'ah could be even worse, where a person falls into kufr and shirk, that's bid'ah. Or he's left Ahlul Sunnah completely and thinks, well, I'm not going to follow the Quran and the Sunnah understanding of Salaf as-Saaleh, I'm going to follow, my ration. Or I'm going to follow, another alternative route, philosophy or something like that. Then he will become a mubtadi' in a more serious sense, where you would have to shun him and reject sitting with him, etc. So bid'ah is on different levels.
The thing that you mentioned, Sheikh, what was the scholars I referred to? Is there a name for it?
Imam al-Dhahabi said there's bid'ah which is mukaffirah, which will take you outside of Islam, and then there are bid'ah which are less than that, which are bid'ah amaliyah and then bid'ah which are amaliyah are different types also. There's bid'ah which are asliyah, there's bid'ah idafiyah, and it's very technical. Sometimes, leaving this, the last point here, when it comes to ijtihad, sometimes one must follow the ijtihad of another, even if he feels otherwise. Okay, let's leave that. That's a bit complicated. Okay, taqleed, very last thing here. So now we've looked at ijtihad. What about us? We're lay people. What do? We are all, in the definition of it, muqallid. Why? Because we do not understand the religion with its proof. If you don't really understand the religion with its proof, you're a muqallid. Just like those people who have studied the religion, etc. If they don't understand the proof, 4 and 5, then they are muqallid in that sense. They're not mujtahid. Mujtahid means that you understand the Quran and the Sunnah and with a great deal of intricacy. You have the Arabic language, you have usul al-fiqh, you have all those things that we've just talked about. If you don't have that, then you fall into that other category, which is the category of the mustafti or the muqallid. So either you're here or there. There is no real in between. Even the talib al-ilm, sometimes he's here and sometimes he's there. Yeah, so somebody might ask, well, this person, he studied such and such period in Medina or whatever. He could have one foot in ijtihad and another foot in taqleed. Because in certain areas he might not know the dalil for it, and he's still in that taqleed phase there, but in certain areas he might be in ijtihad. You see that? There's a transition going on. But for most people, either there or there. So the lay person, he is not allowed to make taqleed of a madhab. He must, what does he do? Does he say, well, I'm a Hanafi, so I'm going to read a Hanafi book and I'm going to follow a Hanafi way or a Maliki way or Shafi? That's not allowed. And Ibn Abd al-Barr, the famous Maliki scholar, he said there's complete consensus between all the madhahib that taqleed is haram. You're not allowed to follow Abu Hanifa for the sake of Abu Hanifa. You're not allowed to follow Imam Malik for the sake of Imam Malik, etc. That's not allowed. Who are you supposed to follow? Who has been sent as a guide? Who is the one who is always correct? Rasulullah sallallahu alaihi wasallam. So the lay person, what he must do is must ask, what does Allah say? What does the Rasul of Allah say? He asks category 1, 2 and 3 because they are the ones who understand. And they're the ones who are able to present. Now, once he understands that from them, he says, khalas, now I understand that this is the right way of doing things because of the dalil that he has presented. Now, this is how you understand your religion. If you don't have access to that, living in the West, maybe living in Loughborough, you don't have 1, 2 or 3, maybe you don't even have 4 or 5, in that scenario, only then, out of necessity, will taqleed become permissible. Another qaida when it comes to taqleed, and the last one, it's worse when a person blindly follows only one person. Ibn Taymiyyah rahimahullah, in the continuation from what he said elsewhere, is that the Ummah agreed that when you say, this is important, I'll put it here, why? Because some people will say, I only follow Abu Hanifa. Don't talk about Malik, don't talk about anybody else, only Abu Hanifa. Ibn Taymiyyah said this is the worst type of taqleed. Because not only are you making taqleed, which is bad in itself, you're not asking the scholar for the dalil, etc. But you've limited it to one person to make taqleed to. Rather than you saying, well, I'll make taqleed of Abu Hanifa, and Imam Malik, Imam Shafi, and I'll make taqleed of all of them. Meaning, I will follow their opinion, which suits me and I think is most correct, not for my desires, but I think is most pious. This represents Islam the best. But I don't know the dalil. I don't know why he said that. But Imam Malik said that, and that sounds quite good to me. That is a better form of taqleed, rather than a person saying, no, tell me about one particular man only, from the whole of Islamic history, or don't tell me anything at all. That is even worse. That's the worst form of taqleed. And the ulama agreed that a person, when he falls into taqleed, he's falling into a very a grave error, because now what you are doing is you are entrusting a person for your whole religion, and it can even lead to bid'ah and taqleed in issues of kufr and shirk, where a person then is not able to differentiate and say, well, Mulana said it, or the Sheikh said it, or the Pir said it, and it must be true. That's how bad taqleed can become. To the extent that even the ulama are completely agreed, it's complete scholarly consensus that that kind of approach to your religion is not allowed. The ulama, the madhahib, then said it themselves. If you go into the beginning of Sir Salah Nabi of Shaykh Albani, this is how he begins his book, to highlight the importance of following the dalil and asking the ulama if you don't know. Ask Allah to make this beneficial for you. Jazakallah khair for your patience. I know it's been a lengthy one today, but I hope it's been beneficial and it's clarified some of these issues. I ask Allah to make this beneficial for us all and unites us with